Welcome to the Dripping in Black podcast, where we celebrate Black excellence throughout the Black diaspora. Here's your host, David V. Lewis.
What's up, good people all across the world? This is the Dripping in Black podcast. I am your host, David V. Lewis. And per usual, we have another fantastic guest. Today's guest is Dr. William Lake. William, say hello to the world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, Dr. William Lake, we have a mutual acquaintance, and that's how we set up this interview by the name of Dr. Tanya Mitchell-Spradlin, who was also a guest on the podcast earlier, right? And she was one of our more phenomenal guests that we've had, and so we want to shout her out. But she set this thing up where we have a chance to learn Dr. William Lake's story. So let's begin by talking about William Lake. Who is William Lake?
Well, first, I'm the son of two wonderful parents who unfortunately have left me and are resting with the ancestors, William Lake Sr. and Janice Lake, mother and father. I'm the brother of Jennifer Monet Lake. She's going to kill me because I just used her middle name, but I named her, so I get to do that. And I'm absolutely, yeah, I did. That's a funny story about that, but I won't even go there. But so we both are from Cambridge, Maryland, which is on the eastern shore of the state of Maryland. To give people an idea of where that is, if you've ever been to Ocean City, we're about an hour before Ocean City, a small gas stop town, great seafood there. My actual house is about 15 minutes from the birthplace of Harriet Tubman. And so that's part of the pride and tradition and heritage of my hometown in that area. Gloria Richardson is another major name. It's International Women's Week, so these are great names to put out there. She's a product of Cambridge, Maryland, a big icon in the civil rights era. Cambridge was a hotbed, believe it or not, for that period of time. So that's where I'm from. I started playing the piano at the age of 2. For some reason, I was able to replicate sounds that I heard in church worship. I was a member of Wall Chapel United Methodist Church there in Cambridge. And for some reason, I could hear what the choir was singing. I would run to the piano, and I'm sure it started off as just banging or whatever at first, but eventually people could recognize melodies that I'm actually playing back what was actually just sung. Freaked my mother out. She didn't understand how that was supposed to work because, you know, here I am, 2, 3, not really reading at that point. But how am I able to replicate sounds that I'm hearing? And so at the age of 4, I started taking piano lessons with Peggy Farrow, another awesome Black woman in my experience there. And she asked me, how would you like it if you could pick up any piece of music and you could play what was on the page? And of course, I was fine with that, having played by ear, but the idea of being able to be limitless when it came to my musicianship really inspired me. And so I did that, played, took lessons with her, joined the school band in 4th grade. And at some point in time, either 4th or 5th grade, I had another wonderful female in my life, Candace Alaback, who is no longer with me. She's passed on. She passed away due to breast cancer, but she was my band director. And one day, I don't know why, but I asked her, why do you get to conduct all the time and all we get to do is play? And she was kind of like, oh, well, what do you mean? You know, teachers, we say that in order to kind of stall, trying to figure out like, well, how in the world am I supposed to answer this kid? Yeah. But she asked me, well, what do you mean? I said, no, well, you know, in our little method book, it shows us that, you know, this is the 2 pattern, this is the 3 pattern, this is the 4 pattern. Yeah, it's pretty easy. So like, why do you get to do this all the time? And what she did for me is something that I always tell this story as a model of what access looks like and what great music education looks like. Because instead of dismissing me and saying, well, you know, I'm the conductor and you're, you know, the trombone player, she said, well, William, come up. Here's my baton and conduct the band. And we were playing R. Lee. And not only did I conduct it, but when I was done, I guess she thought I was done, but I wasn't done, because I was telling people, well, you're too loud and you didn't do this right and whatever. So I completely like went into total conductor mode. And, you know, after then I had a great choir teacher, Babs Huffnagel, who I still keep in contact with, elementary school. I remember it was Black History Month, either 4th or 5th grade. She taught the Negro National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. And I told her, well, we sing this in church all the time, and this isn't really how this goes. It goes like this, you know, or whatever, you know, putting the salt, pepper, and ketchup on how we do that. And so she invited me to play along with her, and she allowed me to choose like the tempi and the style and all those kind of things. So I just had tons of people pouring into me and affirming, you know, my artistry. I played in middle school and sang in the choir there. I had a great experience. Deborah Rowe, great choral teacher. To grow with her, I accompanied the choir, played in the jazz band with Chuck Bilconish. And then I had a gentleman who was a legacy in my hometown, my high school band director, Robert Batson, who I just called and talked to him last week. He's about a 7-foot tall African-American Black man who was just a titan in our community. As the head guy. He was the band director of the high school. He actually integrated our high school, you know, a program, because our city, of course, going from segregation to integration. He was the band director to sort of make that transition for our community. And so he had generations and generations of students come through there. But I had him as my band director, and literally he allowed me not to just be drum major, but like I played, I asked him questions. When he was gone, substitutes were gone, I ran rehearsal, all these kind of things. And so had great affirmations with him in my skill and talent. Virginia Brohan, our choral teacher, I accompanied the choir, and then went on to University of Maryland, College Park, go Terps, for my undergraduate degree in jazz studies, piano performance. Which is very unique for my field to have an undergrad degree in jazz piano, but that's my story. And I then became drum major of the Mighty Sound of Maryland for 4 years. At that point in time, no one had the title of drum major for 4 years during their tenure, and I was one of the first people to do that. And then I started teaching at Gwynn Park High School in Prince George's County, Maryland, one of the most affluent Black communities, counties in the entire country. I was there at Gwynn Park for 5 years, had memorable times with those students. Those students are still very close to me. We still stay in touch. I have several that have gone into the teaching profession. And then after then, I wanted more from school, went to University of Maryland, College Park again, and studied with Dr. Michael Voda when conducting. And after that, there's a great story with that. Maybe we'll get to that. After that, I went to University of North Carolina at Greensboro to get my doctorate in instrumental conducting with Kevin Giraldi and John Locke. And then, thank God, I got a job after all that schooling, you know, because you're broke. So I went to Southeastern University in Lakeland, Florida, in between Orlando and Tampa for 2 years. And then went all the way from Central Florida to Potsdam, New York, which no one knows where Potsdam, New York is at all. Yeah. But I would say if you know where Canada starts, we're just shy of where Canada starts in the upper true upstate New York. We're about an hour and a half from Ottawa, Canada, and about 3.5 hours from Montreal. So literally the border of the United States is about 35 minutes away. So Yeah, and now because of COVID, I'm teaching online. I'm back in the DMV just so I could get good takeout and be around more people. Since we have to be socially distant, I can be around my friends and family. So I've been here for just shy of a year come June. So don't know what the future holds. Hopefully we're on the end of this thing here, but it sort of brings me to today. I'm a church musician. As I talked about that, I've been doing that since age 4, playing for church choir. So that's always been another part of my career path. I've played for several churches in all the states of wherever I've lived. And that faith element through music and artistry is a big part of how I identify.
All right. Well, so thank you for coming out, and thank you for telling your story.
Yeah.
We're done here.
No, there's so much more. I could pick apart. I just try to just give the overall sort of vibe of.
I'm just teasing you. I want to go back to a couple of things that you said. So do you qualify as having perfect pitch? Is that, or is that?
I don't have perfect pitch.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a very strong ear, and probably if earlier in my life I would have pushed closer to having it, I think I could have acquired it, but I don't have perfect pitch, and it's too late to sort of. I think it's really good. Like I can pretty much tell when I hear something, I can go to the piano and play it. So I don't know if I have a very strong relative pitch, but I wouldn't say it's perfect pitch.
Okay. So you start off with the piano at 2, and it seems like it's just been nonstop with music from that point.
Yeah, man.
How many instruments do you play?
So I play piano. And then I guess I kind of split the styles up. You know, there's classical piano. I do play classical piano. I play jazz, gospel. I've done R&B, you know, weddings, whatever. I've done musical theater, playing in orchestra pits for that. But also I play pipe organ, classical pipe organ. I've had jobs at Episcopal churches. So totally on the opposite side of the world of what I was raised, and I'll just be straightforward, white Episcopal churches. The Episcopal church that I played for in Cambridge, there's a story my mom has where they inducted Harriet Tubman to be a saint in the Episcopal church. And it was the Episcopal church in our town that we went to this service when I was little. And it was a community service. And interestingly, Harriet Tubman's slave owner was a member of this church. So it wasn't just that we're inducting Harriet Tubman into the sainthood, but we're doing it in the church where her slave owner actually went to worship. And the organist at the time there was Robert Young. And I was just enthralled with the sound of this huge Casavant pipe organ. And I told my mom, I'm like, I'm gonna play that one day. And she was like, yeah, whatever. But actually, before I graduated high school, I was the organist at that church for 2 years. And clearly the first African-American organist on staff there. And so I've got to be careful because when I say things, they kind of happen. So, you know, but that adds a little bit to that. But so pipe organ, classical, jazz, piano. Trombone was my band instrument. I played trombone just so I could be in the band. It wasn't necessarily, I wanted something that was big and loud. My mom wanted me to play saxophone or violin. She wanted me to play violin like Louis Farrakhan or saxophone like Kenny G, because she said I could, you know, those are the instruments that you romance people with, not the trombone. But that's what I wanted, something big and loud. So that's
it's kind of hard to.
Right, man. It's even though I've heard some people out there have some good swag with it, but it's a little bit different of a image there. So, but that's my other instrument. I sing if I have to. It's not something that I necessarily say is my forte. And part of the reason why I didn't want to even develop that skill, at least mentally, was every time I showed up at a church, you know how it is in Black church, you know, someone knows that you're there, regardless if you're there for whatever the program is, they know that you do something musical. They're like, oh, well, we're going to have, you know, my nickname is JR. We'll have JR come to the front and do a solo. So I was like, you get one or the other. So I play, that's it. You're not getting any words, no, nothing out of that. But I do it, in order to sing for choirs or something like that, or to fill out on a praise team while I'm playing or whatever, directing. I'll do that. So, yeah. But of course, as a music educator, we do have the experience of at least a little bit on all of the wind instruments a little bit, but I definitely wouldn't pick it up now because I haven't done that stuff in years. I haven't played the trombone since undergrad. So it's sort of gone to the background.
As somebody that's never played an instrument, I always marvel at people that can play one instrument, let alone multiple instruments. So that's quite a skill set. And then to be able to play it by ear. And so along the way, you learn how to read music, I'm sure, right?
Right. Absolutely. Well. Absolutely.
So you have that dual threat. All right. So let's get into, the organization that you are currently working for and your titles.
Awesome. So at the Crane School of Music, which is part of SUNY Potsdam. Potsdam is the location. Part of SUNY is the State University of New York system. I am Associate Director of Bands. With that responsibility, I conduct the concert band, the campus community band, and I'm part of a 2-person team. The director of bands is Dr. Brian Doyle. So he conducts the wind ensemble, which is our top ensemble. And he has a co-equal group because we have so many students in the Crane School of Music. We sort of have to split the next sort of younger students into 2. So his group and my group, we play about the same level of repertoire. And so he has the symphonic band, but he is a great colleague and invites me to guest conduct our top students as well. The unique thing about Crane, unlike other schools of music where you probably have a graduate school population and an undergraduate population, we're pretty much all an undergraduate population. More than, I would say, 1/6 of the entire campus are students in the School of Music. So on a campus that's maybe 38,000, if not a little bit less, 1/3 of the students at Potsdam are part of the Crane School of Music. So it's a large school of music, a really, really small campus. And so those are my responsibilities as Associate Director of Bands. I'm the first Associate Director of Bands by title. There have been other people who have done conducting responsibilities, but they did not have that title. And I'm very proud and consider myself blessed to be the first Black conductor in the school's history since the late 1800s, just before the 1900s when the school was actually founded. So it just boggles my mind that I'm the first at something like that, for something that has such a strong history in the state of New York. Crane provides more than 51% of the music education profession in the state of New York. So it's really hard to find a music teacher in New York who did not go to Crane. So it's a very big school as far as its imprint in the state. And then on my other side of the profession, my professional responsibilities, that is in the music education department, I'm assistant professor of music. So I teach several courses that prepare students to go into the classroom. It's right before they're going to go into their student teaching experience. I also teach a wind literature class. So it's kind of getting students into all of the literature that they may have played, but kind of giving more of the backstory, the composers, the programmatic content. But I also teach conducting, and conducting is honestly the biggest joy that I have in teaching, because I think that that role is where the history, the theory, the performance, your ear training, all of it ends up all synthesized into one responsibility. And that's where you're actually able to make a difference in the world as a conductor in front of your middle school band, high school band, or future college. So
yeah. So I'm listening to you because your first experience as a conductor, you were actually challenging your teacher and saying, well, you're just doing that. Your perspective has changed now.
No, but actually, no, I love it. And I invite my students to challenge.
Your perspective of what the teacher actually was carrying out.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just as simple as moving your fingers, right?
Right. Yeah. No, so I understand that so much more to it. Like, there's so much more to it than what I knew then. But actually, I'll say that my first conducting experience actually goes even before that. I used to put my sister up on our fireplace and start CDs, and she would either be the choir or acting something out, and I would scream at her, and I would kind of play conductor with her. So she actually was my first sort of training ground even before that, but that's very real.
Yeah. All right. So you said you were the first associate director of Crane, or were you the first Black associate director? I want to just make sure.
Both are true. Both are true. So the title is actually new, period. Okay. And then on top of that, the first of the conducting faculty, and our conducting faculty have, I mean, the list of people who have conducted at Crane, the names of the folks are just, it's humbling to even know that my picture is in the faculty, history along with them. But it's just now that we have a person of color in that role.
Yeah. So I like to ask this question as well when I'm dealing with people that are artistic in what they do, or actually pretty much any profession. So when did you think you were good? So let's take the conducting part. At what point do you say, I'm good at this? Did you think that you were good at it?
I still think I'm still in the part of just growing. It's weird. I think I'm going to figure out how to be a great conductor, and then I'm going to be raptured. Like life is going to be over. I really think it's something that, because it's about relationship and how do you get to know people and inspire people. And so I don't think I'm at any point of a finished product. I think I'm definitely at a point where every day is a new challenge. And with that, I just happen to have a high level of success of getting what I want out of the ensemble. But I would not say it's an end mission at all. And I think most artists feel that way, is that we feel as if though there's always something more. We're always chasing, like, how can I do that more efficiently? Or how can I do that better or faster? Or so there's always another brass ring, which I think kind of makes us crazy at the same time. But, I say that it's just now that I'm out of the clutches of my mentors and just kind of doing this thing for real. Like, I'm not far from them because they're still inside of the experiences that I've had with them, but it feels different. Like I'm able to create a little bit more and take more risks. So that's why I think I'm still coming into my own. And I think most artists would tell you that as well. Yeah. And so but as far as being good at it, it's hard because as an artist, you're so critical of the art you put out into the world. And it often catches me by surprise. So like when I was teaching at Gwynn Park, it would be hearing a recording of them and me sometimes not knowing it was them, or being distant from it and going like, oh, like that was kind of good. Like, or even hearing my own playing and, and just being able to maybe juxtapose, a performance of one ensemble at one point in time and then come back 2 years or 3 years later and listen to them now. And then you realize like, well, I guess I had something to do with that and how that works. And so it's a work in progress, man. It just really is.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And that's typically what I get when we interview and I ask that question. So now I'm a double down on that question with when did you know you were good? So, and what I mean by that is, right, you know what you're doing, right? And so when did you arrive at that place where, I know what I'm doing here. I know how to get out of students what I want to get out of them. I know how to get out of this music what I want to get out of it. When did you arrive at that?
And I think each situation reveals itself different, especially because I'm so close to when I graduated the doctoral experience. So it's like you start teaching, about year 3, you're like, oh, I got this. Like I am the conductor. Like, I got it. My students are cooking. My marching band is great. My jazz band is doing well. My concert band is doing well. They are, you know, killing it at solo and ensemble, the little chamber things that they were doing. We were being invited to the Library of Congress. We're playing on the mall. We're invited to Bermuda for free. So like, it's like, okay, I got this. And then we decide to go back to grad school. It's like it starts all over again, man. It's just like, I don't know anything. And so then, like,
yes, indeed.
you know, right? So you go to grad school and it's like, I don't know anything. Like, nothing works anymore. So then you get some skills again. And the whole point of going to getting that, you know, master's degree is to get the doctorate. And so then it's time to, you know, submit your tapes to different schools to see if they will invite you on campus to do the audition. So like, you do a pre-screen and then you're invited to campus. Well, you know, when I saw that, you know, some of the most respected places in the country were like, hey, come to campus and audition, I'm like, oh, well, apparently I'm doing something right. You know, like, you know, this is working. And then you get, you know, it's like, yes, I landed a spot, UNCG, here I go. And then you get there and then it's like, wait, I don't know anything, all over again. So it starts all over again. So like, I honestly believe that like every new situation, you enter into this space where you've got to refigure out and recalibrate things, because conducting isn't an absolute science, right? Because you are a human being and the people in front of you are human beings. And so it's like dancing with a different partner. It's like, oh, this is a little quirky. Like, why did you move like that? And then eventually you'll hit this space where it's like, oh, now we're in the groove and now this is moving. And so I do believe that I'm talented. I think I'm extremely humble when it comes to that. And so maybe that's what you're getting at, like the hesitancy to say certain things. And honestly, it's not me, man. It's all God. It's all what's come before me. It's all the energy of the people who have been trailblazers, if I know them, if I don't know them. And so I'm literally just striving to be a better me. I feel like every day that I have the opportunity to improve. So I still can't give you a date of when did I know I was good, because tomorrow I want to be better. You know, like maybe who I was today, you know, works, but for tomorrow, like it's a different story. It's another opportunity to do it better, to teach better, to be a better musician. So it just brings me back. The work is never done. So I'm just trying to do the best.
I think that's a great lesson to put on, and when you're chronicling somebody's story. I think that when people watch this back, they get to hear that, because to be accomplished doesn't mean that you know it and you have arrived, right? You know, we want to steer away from saying I've arrived. Yeah. Right. This is all, we're always moving, we're always growing, we're always changing and developing. Shout out to Jimmy Hammond for that. All right. So let's talk a little bit about
saying, like, I may be accomplished, but I'm not finished.
Yeah.
So like, what is that I hate to say it, but like, so what is that accomplishment? That just becomes the new baseline for what comes next. Yeah. And I think that's my mother. My mother was really big. She was a English teacher, and she was, you know, she ran a tight ship for my sister and I. And even without her being with me physically, I still hear her, and that standard is still part of who I am. And so it can always be better. And the reason also is that she told me very early on, I think it was the first time I brought home like a B or something like that. And, you know, I was like, Mom, I got a B. And she was not impressed. And she said, you know, JR, you need to understand that when Allison and Scott are running, you must be sprinting beyond them. Yeah. To get the same amount of credit. Like there's that scene in Olivia Pope with Granddaddy Pope and Olivia, and you know they have that exchange, and that's something part of Black culture is we just know we've got to be twice as good to be acknowledged, you know, to some of our other colleagues, and so that's still part of it.
So that's great you went there, because that's where I was headed. So
Okay.
we talked about, all your influences and the positive nature in which you formed and developed, and you've had great people touching upon your life. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that a little bit more later. But let's talk about some of the challenges you face, right? Because you're a Black man conducting band, right? And so, I don't want to be presumptuous here, but I would imagine you face some challenges along the way. So talk a little bit about some of those.
Well, being in a white dominated field is challenging. It's a challenge that only people of color understand. When we interview for a new job, we walk into a room, we know that room is going to be populated with majority of people who don't understand or have any sort of congruent intersection of heritage or cultural upbringing as you do. And so with what we can't deny our history in the United States, and we know that race is a big problem here in our country. And so it's hard, and it took me a long time to shut off the inner voice that was saying, I bet you most of the people in here don't like Black people. I bet most of the people in here don't even have Black friends. I'm sure most of the people in here don't listen to the music that I listen to. They don't eat the food that I listen to, and what are their assumptions of me just walking into the room? And
so you said you shut that off?
I work hard to shut that off.
Why would you?
Yeah. So the reason why I do that is because it confines you. It makes you, you end up in a situation where you're on the defense. And as a conductor, it's my job to wear like, I am me. This is who I am. This is what I believe about the music. I'm inspiring you. This is a collaborative experience. I got to put my emotions on my shoulder, and I can't be authentically me if I'm afraid to show you me, and I'm afraid of how you view me. So I worked really hard to shut that off, and I'm not going to say that it doesn't appear and I have to put it in check every time I enter into a new space, that there is something that begins to, that it's kind of like the volume starts turning up on that voice. I'm like, no, you are wonderful in who you are. You are learned, you know your stuff, you have achieved greatness, you are from greatness, you have something, you have a voice that the world needs to hear, and also I have got to sort of give people a chance, that the people in front of me, it's not right for me to assume that they don't like Black people. So it's a trust thing on both sides. And that's not easy when you can turn on the media and see something totally different. And so it's so vulnerable, man. It's like I'm putting my heart out there of, this is the best me that I have. And I've reworked it. And I'm even teaching my students that you are your own brand. Like, there may be better conductors and there will be better conductors that will exist after me, right now, behind me, etc. But there's only Dr. William Lake Jr. And I can only do things the way that I do them. You can't do what I do the way that I do them, because it ain't gonna work for you. So whether it's I'm caught up in the moment and I decide to code switch and come back and make a reference to this or whatever. I remember in my graduate audition at UNCG, the trumpet player was playing what I thought was too loud. No, the trumpet player was actually being buried by all of the accompanying voices. We were doing Lincolnshire Posey. I thought that the other instruments were too loud. And I stopped the ensemble and I said, that's Beyonce. Kelly, Michelle, you got to get in the background. Like, Kelly, Michelle, like, that's Beyonce. The whole place died laughing. Like, my teacher, they became my future mentors, but they died laughing. But I just realized I can just be myself and talk about it the way I would talk about it. in a way that maybe my teachers can't talk about it the same way. You know, if I tell my,
Absolutely.
if I tell my tubas, you know, hey, like that was lit. Like, yeah, give me more. Like, that's me, you know, and that is going to be something that's part of my brand, and students will respond to it. And it's okay to be me and how I want to express myself. And so, that's
so I
why
want to jump in here
go ahead.
because you said quite a lot of great things. And I want to bookmark some of this because you were talking about your mom teaching you about the effort that it takes, that you have to go above and beyond. And we all, you know, all of us Black people know that.
Everybody's gotten that story, right?
Taught us, we know what the deal is, and maybe some white folks know what the deal is as well. So that's one aspect of racism and how it impacts us. But then you articulated so well the internal aspect of it. And I'm, you know, having interviewed Dr. Spradlin, hers was, it showed up in terms of imposter syndrome is the word she used. All right. But for you, it was more about shutting off these preconceived notions you had about white folks that really they force upon you, but you've got to straighten that out yourself to be great.
Absolutely.
And so it's not just you, you know, having to run harder and, you know, jump higher and all that, but there's also this internal thing that you have to deal with from a challenge standpoint. But let's talk a little bit about the representation. How does it feel to walk into a room as the only Black conductor that's in this room or in this space?
For a while, it felt, and it's still there. It's another thing that I have to just put in check. It feels like I am wearing every single Black musician that has ever existed on the face of the planet on my shoulders, which isn't fair, right? Because like, that's not fair. But I feel like I have got to represent our culture in a way that people walk away thinking Black people can do this and do this in excellence and maybe even better because of the uniqueness of how we emote and the expression of our story that comes out so richly into how we express ourselves, and that links itself to music. And so it's an honor, but it's also, it can sometimes be debilitating. And it can, again, make you box up because you're trying to prove something that's not even fair to yourself. Like, I'm trying to be a monolith to represent the whole entire artistic culture from, you know, Quincy Jones to Whitney Houston to, you know, James the Priest to like, you know, classical. That's just not fair. Like, why can I just be me? But I do walk in, I believe, representing what has come before me. And that gives me the ideal of, wait a minute, I am the descendant of William and Janice Lake. So of course we come up in here and we're excellent at what we do. And that's, again, it's my mother and father, you know, telling me, you know, like, you know, you're smart, you're beautiful as a Black young man, you know, you have something to contribute. And so it still happens, man. Like, and I think Dr. Mitchell's idea about it being imposter syndrome, I think that is the clinical term for it. I mean, it's very easy to second guess yourself because there is someone somewhere who's willing to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's very real. It's very real. But it's a challenge and go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's a tremendous challenge that we face, but it's important that you are excellent in that role, especially when you're one of the few, right? Or the first in your case, for those opportunities for people that, you know, that's going to come behind you in the door that you're kicking open for them, right? It's a huge responsibility, but it's a real thing. And so I'm a history teacher. And I teach African American history as well.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, first lessons I teach my students is about social constructs.
Right.
Right. And we know that race is a social construct. And so, but I teach them that doesn't mean that it's fake.
Right.
Right. It's just made up by society.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that society makes up, but it becomes very real because there's meaning placed on these social constructs. So when we think about race, all of these feelings you're feeling is because it's a real deal. And it's really, you are to some degree carrying the mantle for the Black race in that space that you're in, as unfair as it may be.
Right. And I know, knowing that, my mother integrated her high school in the 60s and, late 60s, early 70s, and knowing she was spat on, like those stories are real. Wow. Like in Princeton, North Carolina, she was one of the first to integrate her school. And then thinking about, every single school that I have a degree from, Black people weren't allowed to walk down the street, so there's a lot of pride that I have. And that's why I work so hard, man. Like I really work really, really, really hard to be better than. And that's just my mode of how I exist. It's just, I'm always working to be better than, and it's not really, it's turned from, of course, being younger, like, your mom's like doing it for my parents, but now I do it for me. That the excellence is because I know I'm excellent, and that's what I demand out of myself. So that's another way I've sort of changed that energy from the approval of others, but does it meet my standard? And my standard is ridiculously high. And it's because of the shoulders from Wakanda that I'm standing on. And I don't take it lightly.
Yeah. All right. So, that's great, man. Part of what we like to do is inspire. We also like to celebrate, and we like to educate. But let's celebrate you a little bit. Let's talk about some of your successes that you've experienced.
Successes. There's so much. I find my students are where I really find the joy of my success. I believe that that's where I will be able to see my effect in the profession. It's not about me. It's about what I see them being able to do. I'm very proud of the students that I have that have gone into music education. The students that I see flourishing in their like random fields of endeavor. I've got students who are working at like corporate Apple like level jobs, students who are getting their doctorate in biomedical engineering type stuff. I mean, like it's me going down Facebook and seeing like all of these, awesome students. And I'll just put out there, Gwynn Park, my band was 98% African-American. So seeing all these Black faces go by and like regardless if they're with Apple or whether they are just great barbers, and just seeing their art and how they, hook a person up or these cool styles or whatever, that's what brings me joy. And that's how I will measure my success. And the way I'll measure it is if I can die empty. I want to die and not have anything left to give to anyone. I want to mentor people. And that's the way I feel like my mom left here. It was time because I had done so much. She had taken me as far as she can go. Same for my sister. And now it was time for us to, run on. And so even though she died at an early age and we're young, but that's how I will measure my success with my students. But things I've done that I'm proud of, it's the music that I've been able to champion and put out there. I recently championed a piece by Black composer Omar Thomas that I dedicated to my parents, Shenandoah. I take it as just a way to put back into the world what was given to me, that students were able to see themselves reflected. Getting this job, man, like, I mean, just being able to land a tenure track college job is not a small measure of grit at all. I mean, you've got to go through master's degrees, graduate degrees, and then still win the gig. And just being honest, you send your tape forward to a committee and you don't know what their thoughts about Black people. Like, here we go again, right? Like, and absolutely. I know that I've got to work harder to land those opportunities. I'm excited. And I 2 years ago, a fellow colleague and we did the first conducting clinic for the HBCU Band Directors Consortium in Atlanta, Georgia. And one of the students there just sent me a message that he is now going to be studying choral conducting at the University of Georgia, Black male from Morehouse. So like, I find my joy in like seeing the fruits of my labor just manifest in so many different ways with people. I've done something, I've been like semi-finalist for some conducting competitions, which are great. But man, it's more about the people I come in contact and seeing what they're able to do. I really believe that. Like, I'm actually struggling to think about the things that I've done that are so celebratory because I'm so focused on how do I pour things into people and see how that sends them off.
It is the greatest gift to impact others and have them get on their way.
And that's why we teach, right? Like that's it. That's why we do it.
That's it. Yeah. That's why we teach. Yeah. So let's lighten it up a little bit. I think we could break the record in the time we've had an interview if we continue on this.
Man, my bad. I go deep.
It's all good, man. It's this is what we're here for, is to share your story. So part of your story, and I was mentioning this earlier, I'm always seeing divinity at work. And so something to me, and I just met you, right? So just for the audience to know, we don't know each other, right? I just met you today, really, through this Zoom.
Right.
And I see an assertive person. You've always been assertive, right? But there's always been somebody there to accept that assertiveness, right? So going back to your story where you said I was, challenging the teacher, the conductor, and instead of the conductor saying, boy, sit down somewhere, brought you on up and allowed you to do that, right? And you gave several other scenarios in which you challenged somebody and they welcomed you in. Come on, sit at the piano. Come on, do this. Come on, do that. And so that was, to me, that's God working. That's God placing you in front of those people, the right people to receive you, you being bold enough and them saying, okay, come on with it. Right. And that's helped nurture your growth. And so I just think that's fantastic, man. And going deep is great for what we're trying to do here. Now,
so real.
We talked a little bit about that t-shirt or that hoodie you have on.
Oh yeah, man.
Pre-show. Let's talk a little bit about that before we close out.
Yeah. So my father was an entrepreneur and used to do all kinds of random things. And so I think I kind of got that from him. So I have a custom apparel business that I run, Lakeside Tees, keeping my father's name alive there. And so I create custom apparel. I've done things for all family reunions, whatever, bands for their like summer dress down gear, hoodies, t-shirts, the whole 9 yards. I do a lot of graphic design work as well. I do it for my job. It's not even part of the job, but I want us to look good on social media and be able to reach an audience that is glued to our cell phones. So I do all kinds of apparel. A lot of it, if I come up with something that's, I think, trendy that people would want, I put it up. I have an Etsy page right now. At some point, I'm thinking about moving over to its own private site. So if you just look at Lakeside Tees on Etsy, you'll see there's apparel in celebration of our first Black female Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, who shout out to Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I'm an Alpha Phi Alpha brother. So I'm excited about that. This t-shirt I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams, but it's got that like Martin kind of font from that sitcom. And so it's just a way that for me to celebrate, honestly, myself. And I'm just trying, I've got all kinds of things. I just got to the point where I didn't want to wear other brands because I am my own brand. So, my clothes has got to, they got to go with it too. So I've got a lot of that. And just to make big, bold statements about who I am and what I believe. And truth be told, it's also a reminder to myself that every time I go somewhere, and granted, that's a heavy crown that we wear, I'm surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses that are cheering me on, that look like me. And for me to never get too high to forget that. And so
I'm gonna ask that you stand up a little bit so we can see the drip of it.
I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams. It's on the Etsy site. You can go on there, get it.
Give us that site again.
It's Lakeside Tees on Etsy. Lakeside Tees on the Etsy.com site, and it'll come up with a whole bunch of different articles of swag you can get. So appreciate the support, but honestly, it's more about you being able to flex as you go, around your communities and encourage somebody else.
All right. So how long have you been at Crane School of Music?
Yeah, I've been at Crane. This is my second year. It feels really weird because, COVID happened and I only did 3 of the 4 concerts. So the semester stopped in March. We were online. And I'm still online and I'm not in Potsdam. It's weird. It's been a weird 2 years, man. But I've been there for 2 years and I'm enjoying it. I really am.
Yeah. So as a history teacher, Potsdam means something else. They had the conference at Potsdam dealing with World War II when they decided to bomb Hiroshima. So that's when I saw that, I was like, well, I didn't really took a drift there, but that's what popped in my mind immediately.
Oh man.
So so there's a thing called the Potsdam Declaration. You people look that up just watching this episode. But let's go into I think we're going to go into let me ask this question. I want to ask this before we get to the last question. And that is, so you at Crane, you face some challenges because of COVID. Where would you like, if you could have your fondest wish answered, where would you like what you're doing at Crane to go, let's say in the next 5 years?
One of the big things that Crane has to figure out, and the university has to figure this out, is diversifying the student population. Black student population is very, very slim at Crane. It's very, very low, which doesn't make sense according to the demographics of New York. Just if you look at it, New York is a very, as a state as a whole, is very diverse. And actually, I think the Latinx population is actually the majority when you look at the data altogether. And we're not doing a great job with reaching Black and brown students. And thus what happens is then, being 51% of the education population, music education population, therefore then the teacher force also is not diverse. And so we really have to do a better job with engaging with the entire state in a way that students make their way up, the matriculation chain. We just got to change it. And I think that we have some really hard and challenging conversations to have about that. One of the big issues is just location. Students in New York City, why would I move all the way to almost Canada, like to be a minority, or minoritized. I don't use the word minority anymore. But That's a big challenge. So we've got to figure out how to make our curriculum one that no matter where you are, you want to come here because first of all, you're going to feel championed. You're going to feel safe. You're going to see yourself reflected in the curriculum. You're going to see yourself reflected in your faculty. And those are not easy hurdles to jump over by any means.
Yeah.
So,
and I would say that's a problem that's widespread.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think you're hard pressed to find for, you know, Black kids, brown kids, schools that are, you know, in that vein where, you know, they see themselves represented in a variety of ways, including the curriculum. Right.
Right.
If it's not an HBCU, you're probably hard pressed to find that.
Right.
And, you know, I'm at the high school level and it's hard pressed to find it even at that level. So,
and David, it's about not just the students surviving, but thriving in those environments. You know, it's one thing to get them there,
right?
But like them struggling for 2 years, dropping out. I mean, you just miss it, and so it's a big challenge. It really is.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to the last and most important question of our podcast. Every podcast we end with this question because it's crucial. So the question is, have you ever been on a magazine cover?
I have not been on the cover of a magazine.
Okay. Well, now you have, just by virtue of being a guest of the Dripping in Black podcast.
Gotcha.
Each guest becomes that cover picture. So you're on the cover of the Dripping in Black magazine.
That's good. That's good stuff. I appreciate it, man. I mean, like, just any time that we can put Black faces in a space of prominence and to be featured in who we are is an honor. And so, and it's crazy because I see the picture, I see my father, because the older I get, the more I look like him. So I'm a junior. I really cherish that. So I appreciate it. I really do.
Yeah. Well, that will be not just something we show on the episode, but a parting gift for you. We get that printed out and we send that to you at a later date. So that's just a thank you for having you come on. Listen, we could talk a lot more, and I think that we will. I think we'll reach out to you to have more conversation around some other things. Great in-depth conversation, but we want to thank you, Dr. William Lake, for gracing us with your presence, and hope to see you again in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invite. And I think this podcast is just absolutely excellent in featuring Blackness in excellence.
Yeah. Thank you. I want to give you an opportunity again to drop any social media that you want to drop at this point.
I have a YouTube page that's on there, and it's easy to find. Just go into the search engine. You can look up William Lake Jr. That's there. I recently started a organization called ICU, Affirming Representation in Music, for all sort of networking workshops, master classes for people of color specifically, whether it's at the student level. We just did a high school kind of like, so you want to be a music major, like what you need to be thinking about now. So that's also on Facebook. Just type in ICU and you'll see Affirming Representation in Music. Follow us there. My colleague and I, we just started that. But YouTube and Facebook, and then my own website is www.wlljr.com. So again, www.wlljr.com. You can see videos. If I'm doing a lecture somewhere, that's all up there. And I just appreciate the support. I really do.
All right. So thanks again, Dr. William Lake Jr., for coming out and gracing us with your presence. And we're going to ask the audience to hold on as we go into the final segment of our podcast, The Last Drip.
Up next, The Last Drip.
A Dripping in Black thanks to Dr. William Lake Jr. for joining us and sharing his inspirational journey towards his many firsts as a young African-American male, blazing a trail as a conductor in the predominantly white male world of classical music. Plus, I revel in the fact that his journey has just begun. However, we have reached the final segment of our podcast called The Last Drip. The Last Drip is the last opportunity for us to squeeze in a bit more of Black excellence for you. In this final segment, we highlight a common thread between our guests and our vast and rich African-American history. For this episode, we celebrate a giant in the history of American conductors, Black or otherwise, Maestro Dr. Paul Freeman. Born in 1936 in Richmond, Virginia, Paul began playing piano at 5, then moved on to the clarinet and cello. At age 17, Paul gained his first experience conducting, directing a performance of his high school band after the band conductor became ill. In 1952, Freeman began studying at the Eastman School of Music of Rochester, New York, where he earned his bachelor's in 1956, master's in 1957, and doctorate in 1963. In 1987, Paul founded the Chicago Sinfonietta and served as its first music director and conductor, a position he would serve for 24 years. From 1979 to 1996, Dr. Freeman served simultaneously as a music director or an associate director or a guest conductor for several other notable orchestras across the world. Dr. Freeman has been recognized for his work in numerous ways, including receiving 2 Emmy Award nominations. Over his lifetime, Freeman led more than 100 orchestras in over 30 countries. Freeman is also one of America's most successful recording conductors, with approximately 200 releases to his credit. Perhaps Dr. Freeman's greatest accomplishment, however, was helping to reshape the ethnic landscape of classical music. Under Paul's leadership, the Chicago Sinfonietta established and achieved its primary goal of promoting diversity and inclusiveness throughout its organization and its audiences. Today, nearly half of its professional performers are people of color. Dr. Freeman was a Black change agent whose residual effects have helped pave the way for the inclusion of minoritized people in classical music, such as today's guest, Dr. William Lake Jr., and many, many others. So in honor of his life's work and far-reaching influence, Maestro Dr. Paul Freeman is this episode's last drip. For more on Maestro Dr. Paul Freeman, check out blackpast.org, chicagotribune.com, and chicagosinfonietta.org. My thanks to all of these websites for the knowledge. This last drip segment is also the final last drip for our first season of the Dripping in Black podcast. I want to give a big public thanks to Rochelle Cunningham, aka The Voice, aka Ro the Entertainer, aka Roku, for all of her contributions to our podcast and promos throughout season 1. I also want to thank my executive producer, Sean Smith, for making this segment come to life with his editing skills and all of his behind the scenes work. In total, Sean and I have provided the world with some 24 short video summaries that highlight some of the greatness from our vast and rich African-American history. I encourage all of our viewers and listeners to make time to learn a little bit about these Black pioneers and trailblazers whose legacies we were lucky enough to document this season. If you haven't already, I encourage you to subscribe for free to the DIBK YouTube channel and receive firsthand notifications regarding Dripping in Black video releases. A big thanks to all of our faithful listeners and viewers for supporting us throughout our inaugural season. You are truly appreciated by us both. Please tell a friend to tell a friend and join us as we usurp control of our narrative, debunk negative stereotypes, and tell our own true stories of Black excellence. And until next time, be kind, be loving, and be excellent on purpose. It is a choice.
You have just experienced a Dripping in Black production.